Chapter 321. A crease appeared between Benjamin's brows as he instructed Ethan, "Go upstairs and take a look to see if he's inside the kids' room." Benjamin was worried that the kids would be scared when they saw Jack. "Yes, Mr. Graham." Ethan immediately headed back into the house to check. Right after he stepped into the house, he heard a scream coming from upstairs, and his expression darkened instantly. Orissa had also heard the scream. She stopped whatever she was doing at once and rushed out of the kitchen. "Mrs. Graham, I'll take a look upstairs. Jack might have scared the kids," Ethan informed Orissa. "Hurry, please help to check on them now." Orissa nodded. As she was in the midst of cooking something over the stove, she waited by the stairs and listened closely. Soon, she heard Ethan reprimanding Jack. "Jack, did you scare the kids earlier on?" Orissa chuckled. As both men were Benjamin's trusted subordinates, she was certain that the kids were safe with them. Feeling relieved, she returned to the kitchen and continued preparing breakfast. Ethan stared at Jack and said, "You gave Mrs. Graham a scare too." Jack laughed in embarrassment and replied, "I couldn't help myself and was staring at the kids earlier on. As they didn't recognize me, they got a shock when they saw me after waking up. It won't happen again." Ethan was speechless when he heard the man's explanation. "Mr. Graham is downstairs. Are you going to greet him?" Ethan shot a glance at Jack and asked. "Mr. Graham is awake." Jack was slightly stunned. "He's by the pool," Ethan replied. "Well, little ones, I need to look for your daddy now. I'll play with you guys next time." Jack stroked the children's heads one by one before making his way out of the room. The 5 little ones were momentarily stunned. However, as Gavin was already used to the man's silly behavior, he quickly snapped out of his daze and said, "Let's go and wash up." After saying that, the eldest boy stood up and led the way. Just then, Ethan walked over to hug the kids affectionately. "Good morning, boys and Miss Jessie." Zachary, Oliver, Jasper, and Jessie widened their eyes at Ethan. "Mr. Frank, you know Jessie is a girl." Ethan was amused by Jasper's question and touched his cheek lovingly. "Of course, Miss Jessie was the first one I met." Ethan took Jessie in his arms and pinched her cheek affectionately. Jessie chuckled joyfully while Zachary and Oliver smiled, recalling the moment they met Benjamin. At the time, Jessie was with Orissa, and they were unable to avoid the man in time. As such, they could only leave Jessie to deal with Ethan. "Mr. Frank, Daddy doesn't know about Jessie yet. You have to keep it a secret." Gavin kept an uptight expression as he reminded Ethan solemnly. Ethan made an okay gesture and replied, "I promise not to tell." After pondering for a moment, Ethan asked, "Does Jack know about Miss Jessie?" "Doesn't seem like it," Zachary replied confidently. The corners of the boy's lips curled up into a smile as he recalled Jack's silly mannerisms and thought about how careless the man was. Earlier on, although Jasper had a slip of the tongue, the man did not seem to notice it at all. "Come, I'll bring you all to wash up now." Ethan picked up 2 kids, one in each hand. After placing them on the floor, he turned to fetch the rest from the bed. Zachary and Jasper quickly slipped out of bed themselves and put on their shoes before following Gavin to the bathroom. Ethan smiled affectionately when he saw that. "You guys don't want to be carried by me. We haven't washed up yet," Jasper replied while Jessie ran into the bathroom with a smile on her face. Meanwhile, Oliver doubled back to retrieve his glasses. When Ethan saw that the boy only headed to the bathroom after putting on his glasses, he asked, "Oliver, isn't it very inconvenient for you to wash your face while wearing your glasses?" "I can't see without my glasses," Oliver replied without turning around. Even though the boy was the last to reach the bathroom, Zachary had already squeezed toothpaste on his brother's toothbrush. "Thanks, big brother." "Oops, sorry, you're my second eldest brother now," Oliver said cheekily. "Well, I don't mind if you continue treating me as your big brother," Zachary replied with a joyful expression on his face. He missed those days when he was the eldest kid. "What if I mind?" Gavin teased his brother. Zachary glanced at the older boy before replying, "I should have asked Mommy to give birth to me first." Gavin was speechless when he heard that. Chapter 322. When Ethan heard the conversation among the children, he found it amusing. "I don't think you get a choice. There must be a reason why the oldest is the oldest and thus, the boss. He chimed in. Zachary threw him a glance and said deliberately, Mr. Frank, are you showing favoritism toward Gavin? Ethan tugged on Zachary's ear and replied, I'm just being honest. I dote on you too. That's more like it, said Zachary with a smile. He then looked at Gavin and said, all right then. You can be the oldest. Anyway, it's tough to be the oldest. Gavin grinned. Thanks, Zachary, I will do my best. Jasper let his imagination run wild and said, hee hee. Do you think mommy might have another child? For all we know, that one is the real boss. Gavin was speechless. On the other hand, both Zachary and Oliver found it funny. Ethan asked, didn't your mommy tell you how many children she gave birth to? Before mommy returned, no, even after she came back here, she still didn't say anything about Gavin. I only found out about it after I was taken by the bodyguard by mistake. Jasper glanced at Ethan, who smiled with relief. Luckily, all of you are back now. It was a joyous thing to see that Benjamin, Orissa, and their 5 children had been reunited. I wonder if mommy is up. Jessie wanted to look for Orissa. Ethan told her, she's awake. She was downstairs a while ago. Hee hee, mommy must be cooking something delicious for us. I can smell the aroma. Jessie was feeling hungry and quickly brushed her teeth. Her 4 brothers found it hilarious to see her so impatient. Nonetheless, Zachary reminded her, brush your teeth properly. If they aren't clean enough, your teeth won't be able to grow out. Jessie stuck her tongue out and continued to brush her teeth, albeit more seriously. Both Jasper and Oliver laughed out loud. Once Gavin had finished brushing his teeth, he wet Jess's towel and said, let me wipe your face for you. Jessie stuck her head toward him. Thank you, Gavin. With one hand holding Jess's head, Gavin wiped her face gently with the other. The other 3 cleaned their faces by themselves. Ethan could never get sick and tired of looking at the 5 of them. Mr. Frank, can you leave us for a while? Zachary glanced at him and chased him out. Why? Asked Ethan curiously. We want to pee. You want to see that too. Jasper was looking distinctly displeased at the idea. Ethan almost choked. They're still so young. Yet, they're already so shy. I'll wait for all of you outside then. Ethan had no choice but to leave. The 4 boys came out and guarded the door while Jessie used the bathroom. Once Jessie was done, they then went in to pee. I'm going down to look for mommy. Wait for me. When Jasper tried to stop her, his pee accidentally spilled onto Oliver. Jasper. Oliver glared at him. Jasper giggled in embarrassment. I'm so sorry, Oliver. You had better change your pants. Oliver smacked his brother on his head. You're going to wash my pants for me later. Jasper froze when he heard that. He pointed at Oliver's pants and said, it's only a small patch. You don't really have to wash it. Oliver was speechless. Then, why don't you pee on your own pants? That was when Jasper stopped talking. Gavin reminded them, we have a washing machine. Just throw the pants in for a wash. Mommy said it's better to wash clothes by hand. That way, the clothes won't get damaged so easily. Oliver glared at Gavin. He was unwilling to compromise his precious clothes by throwing his pants into the washing machine. Zachary knew what he was up to and chuckled. Jasper, you made it dirty, so you have to wash it. Jasper pouted and gave in. All right, I'll wash it for him. When the 4 boys went out, they were dismayed when they could not see Jessie or Ethan. Mr. Frank must have kidnapped Jessie, huffed Jasper before he went back in and changed his clothes like the rest of his brothers. Chapter 323. Ethan carried Jessie downstairs, and she kept looking around. The moment she saw Orissa in the kitchen, she struggled to get down. Mr. Frank, put me down. I want to go to mommy. Ethan pinched her cheek in adoration before doing as she said. The instant her feet touched the ground, she made a dash for the kitchen. Mommy, mommy. When Orissa heard her daughter's voice, she stuck her head out and saw her child running toward her in her pajamas. Laughing, Orissa questioned, have you washed your face yet? Mommy, I have. Gavin cleaned my face for me. Jessie gave a toothy grin and threw herself into her mother's arms. Orissa pinched her tiny face. Did you thank Gavin? What? Jessie was taken aback. I did. But I forgot to kiss him. I'll make it up to him later. Orissa nodded with a smile. That's better. Go out and play first. I'm not done with cooking yet. Edwin looked at Jesse longingly. My dear boy, shall I make you some milk? Edwin asked Jesse as he leaned toward her. Jesse blinked and smiled. Looking at her innocent and spirited face, Edwin's heart melted. If only he was a girl. Thank you, Mr. Whitley, replied Jesse sweetly. Edwin ruffled her hair and went to make her milk. Orissa looked at her daughter and smiled. Get out of here. You are blocking the way in the kitchen. Go and see if your brothers are down already. Okay. With that, Jessie ran out. From a distance, she saw her 4 brothers coming down the stairs and yelled, Mommy. All of them are here. Hurry up. Orissa was not in a hurry because she saw Edwin making milk for the children. It was still early. Benjamin walked in with Ethan and Jack behind him. When Gavin, Zachary, Oliver, and Jasper saw Benjamin, they kept their eyes on him. As Benjamin was clad in a bathrobe, it was hard to tell if he still had the allergy symptoms. Good morning, Mr. Graham, greeted Zachary, Oliver, and Jasper. Good morning, shouted Gavin, but he did not address Benjamin as Daddy. Benjamin swept his eyes across the children and paused at Gavin. Good morning, he greeted in return. Go and have your breakfast. Your mommy is in the kitchen. As Benjamin was going up the stairs, the 4 boys eyed him before running toward the kitchen. Both Jack and Ethan followed suit as well. Good morning, Mommy. The 4 boys greeted their mother as they ran toward her. Orissa quickly put the food down on the table and embraced her sons with a smile. Sweethearts, take a seat and have your breakfast. The 4 boys were thrilled. Jessie was already seated at the dining table and drinking her milk. She called out to her brothers, Guys, come quick. The 4 boys went over and squirmed into their seats. Good morning, Mr. Whitley. Good morning, boys. Edwin acknowledged them and gave each one of them a glass of milk. Orissa served the children bowls of oatmeal porridge. After you finish the milk, eat your oatmeal porridge. Be careful, it's hot. After attending to her children, she called out to Jack and Ethan. Have you guys had your breakfast yet? If you haven't, join them. Mrs. Graham, I haven't eaten yet, said Jack gleefully. Ethan chimed in, Mrs. Graham, I haven't eaten either. Orissa invited them to take a seat and served each of them a bowl of oatmeal porridge too. She could not be bothered to correct their way of addressing her. All of you eat first. I'll bring out some snacks. Chapter 324. Mrs. Graham, let me do it. You sit down and take your breakfast with them. You have already done so much the whole morning, said Edwin. It's fine, I won't be long. Orissa went in and brought more food out. Looking at the sumptuous breakfast, Jack and Ethan could not wait to dig in. Mrs. Graham, did you make all these food yourself? Ethan was astonished. Of course. My mommy is the one who made all these. My mommy can cook very well. Jessie was filled with pride. Orissa replied with a smile, Edwin and I made all these together. Eat as much as you want. Thank you, Mrs. Graham. Jack was delighted and started to dig in. The 5 children sat on one side. After they had finished their milk, they began to have their breakfast. Gavin called out, Mommy. Come and sit down. Sure, let me put my apron away first. After that, Orissa went to wash her hands before sitting down with them. The 5 of them moved aside and let their mommy sit down. How does the oatmeal porridge taste? Orissa asked for everyone's opinion. Ethan gave her a thumbs up. It's great. Jack was busy stuffing himself with food, but he nodded in approval nevertheless. The 5 children took a bite of their food first before answering Orissa's question. Mommy, it tastes just nice. Be careful, it's hot. Orissa took a spoon and stirred their oatmeal porridge to cool it down. Aren't we waiting for Mr. Graham? Asked Jack all of a sudden as he looked at Orissa and the 5 children. Orissa replied, he has already eaten. He ate first. Gavin frowned when he heard that. Orissa giggled. Yes, I already made him a Western breakfast before all of you woke up. Ethan told Gavin, I can assure you that when I first got here this morning, Mr. Graham was having his breakfast. Gavin pursed his lips. I thought Daddy never likes to have breakfast. I can't believe he ate before all of us. Just then, they could hear the sound of a car coming from outside. Orissa looked out. Who can it be? Benjamin. The moment the engine of the car stopped, they could hear someone shouting. Everyone at the dining table turned to look. Kingsley stormed into the house, and when he saw nobody in the living room, he strode to the dining room. However, there was no sign of Benjamin. When he saw Orissa and the 5 children staring at him weirdly, he restrained his anger immediately. Instead, he greeted them with a smile. "So, all of you are having your breakfast. Uncle Kingsley, are you here to settle your scores with Mr. Graham?" asked Gavin casually. It was obvious to everyone. Kingsley scanned the food on the table and sat down next to Jack. "Edwin, please get me a bowl of oatmeal porridge." Since he had yet to have his breakfast, he might as well have his fill. It was only then Kingsley turned to Gavin and answered his question. "Your daddy is too much. He wants to blacklist one of my stars. The guy didn't even offend him." I asked. Gavin saw how furious he was and asked, "Uncle Kingsley, could it be that you were the one who offended him?" Kingsley was stumped and turned to look at Ethan. "Ethan, what's going on?" Ethan shrugged his shoulders and looked flabbergasted as well. "I'm not sure. I was only passing the message according to what Mr. Graham told me. When I got here, Mr. Graham didn't say anything other than to blacklist that person." Orissa looked at them and felt that this matter was somehow related to her. "Can I know who it is that he wanted to blacklist?" At that instant, both Kingsley and Ethan looked at her. Kingsley said angrily, "He wants me to blacklist. What are you doing here?" Suddenly, an authoritative voice cut Kingsley off. Chapter 325. Benjamin walked over. He had showered and was dressed in his suit and leather shoes. He then put the jacket he was holding and his tie onto the back of the chair before taking the main seat. With his elegant demeanor and exquisite features, he exuded a mesmerizing charm. On top of that, his half-buttoned shirt and exposed muscular chest made him look so sexy that it was hard for anyone to peel their eyes away. As a result, Orissa couldn't help but stare. When Benjamin shot a thoughtful glance at her, he was secretly elated at the intoxicating manner she was looking at him. Even the agitated look he was giving Kingsley eased. With a reddened face, Kingsley launched a rapid tirade just like a machine gun. "After blacklisting my star, how can you have the cheek to ask what am I doing here? Benjamin, you'd better have a good reason for doing this. Don't you dare blacklist someone I have spent so much effort in promoting." Shooting Kingsley a glare, Benjamin snorted, "Do I even need a reason to do so? How dare he question me in front of Orissa? My pride and dignity will be affected if she finds out." Feeling a chill down his spine, Kingsley pursed his lips in response to Benjamin's warning. He retorted meekly, "But still, how can you blacklist him without a reason? Do you know how unfair it is to him considering that he's innocent? HMPH. I just don't like the way he looks. Is that a good enough reason for you?" Benjamin gave him the side eye. Throughout the exchange, Orissa shifted her attention between the two men. When an answer emerged within her mind, she couldn't believe it still. "Is Benjamin blacklisting the star I casually commented about? Are you guys talking about?" Kingsley's eyes lit up. Just when he was about to respond, Benjamin preempted him with a shout, "Kingsley!" Kingsley turned toward him and gave him a puzzled look. Benjamin narrowed his gaze. "Stop talking at the dining table." Kingsley felt aggrieved. Who was it that spoke first? How can he be the only one allowed to speak, while I can't? "If you have something to say, get out," Benjamin thundered. Consequently, he had no choice but to purse his lips. He then tilted his head in Orissa's direction and demanded, "Where's my breakfast?" After being briefly stunned, Orissa regained her senses. "Haven't you already eaten?" She stared blankly at Benjamin. Not expecting Orissa to snap back at him, Benjamin's eyes glistened. "It wasn't enough to satisfy me." Pursing her lips, Orissa went into the kitchen and got him a refill. Having not paid any attention earlier, Benjamin furrowed his brows when he saw what was in the bowl. "Why is this sweet?" Giving him the side eye, Orissa plainly replied, "It's a fruit yogurt, so of course it's sweet. Are you expecting it to be savory?" PFF'd. Kingsley almost spat his food out by reflex. At the same time, the children, Ethan, and Jack couldn't help but laugh under their breath. Benjamin glanced at them before digging into this food. It melted in his mouth right away. Luckily, it isn't too sweet. Nevertheless, he still wasn't used to it. Other than soup, he hardly fancied anything else. If you don't like it, you can have something else, Orissa reminded him, having seen his response. After all, she and the children were used to having yogurt for breakfast. It's acceptable, Benjamin grunted in reply. Orissa watched as he continued to eat with a grimace on his face. It was evident that he didn't enjoy the food at all. In fact, he looked as if he was tormenting himself doing it. You look as if you're taking a bitter medicine. Her lips widened into a grin. After looking at her from the corner of his eye, Benjamin picked something else to eat. Did you prepare all this? Ignoring his question, Orissa continued, eating her breakfast quietly. Isn't it obvious? Didn't I repeatedly mention to him that I will be making breakfast for the children? Even though Kingsley, Ethan, and Jack were also eating in silence, they couldn't help but alternate their gazes between those two. Chapter 326. Since Benjamin forbade them from speaking, no one dared to utter a word, for fear of missing out on breakfast. As for the children, they obediently ate their food while sitting beside Orissa. None of them interrupted the adults. Benjamin grunted with furrowed brows when Orissa didn't respond. Orissa glimpsed at him. What is it? I'm asking you a question, why aren't you replying? Benjamin demanded. After taking a bite of her food, Orissa replied, didn't you forbid everyone from speaking at the table? Benjamin choked as an awkward expression descended on his face. Having gotten back at him, Orissa sniggered under her breath. At the same time, everyone else smiled to themselves. Nevertheless, Benjamin continued with breakfast calmly. While everyone was busy eating, Sean arrived suddenly. I'm surprised to see all of you here. Even Kingsley's here. And Jack, when did you come back? Jack replied enthusiastically, a few days ago, Mr. Bailey. Chuckling, Sean took his seat opposite Benjamin. I haven't had my breakfast yet. You wouldn't mind if I join in, would you? Orissa was amused. Luckily, she had prepared extra, or else it wouldn't have been enough. In response, Benjamin shot a piercing gaze at him. At the same time, Edwin broke into a smile and quickly served Sean some food. Mr. Bailey, I can only give you half a serving, as the rest are reserved for the children. Concerned for the children, Edwin refilled all of their bowls. Don't worry about it, I'll have something else. Cognizant that he was late, Sean knew it would be rude to make any requests. After taking a look at the dining table, Edwin went off to prepare more food. So, Benjamin, do you feel better today? Sean inquired about Benjamin's allergy symptoms. I don't feel anything from it, Benjamin replied. Has the rashes on your body receded? Sean asked again. Orissa looked in Benjamin's direction too. Given that she was too distracted by his figure earlier, she had forgotten to check on the rashes. Thus, she had no idea whether he had completely healed. Benjamin glanced in her direction before returning his attention to Sean. There's still a little left. After observing that Benjamin was in high spirits, Sean was no longer worried about a relapse. Remember to take your medication. Or, if you'd like, I could give you another jab. However, too many jabs might cause you to feel drowsy. Sean then reminded, don't forget to apply the medication too. Benjamin nodded slightly. I'll do it in a while. As the children stared at Benjamin, Jasper was the first to speak out. Mr. Graham, aren't you fully recovered? Why do you still need to apply the medication? He had just seen that the rashes on Benjamin's body had almost faded away. Hence, he reckoned there was no need for the medication at all. Benjamin gave him the side eye and cooked up an excuse. It's still a little itchy. Hearing that, Jack and Ethan gave him a strange look. They were surprised that Benjamin was actually bothered by the itch. Glancing at Benjamin, Orissa added, to be safe, you should take and apply one more day's worth of medication. Got it, Benjamin acknowledged. When Sean and the others heard it, they gave Benjamin a look of surprise. That's obedient of him. When Orissa noticed everyone's gaze shifting to her, she gave them a puzzled look in return. Kingsley teased, it seems your words carry a lot of weight. Usually, he refuses to take any medication even when he has the flu. Orissa giggled. Is that so? Kingsley, you'd better shut up if you don't have anything good to say, Benjamin warned. Kingsley pursed his lips in response. He is obviously biased against me since he doesn't admonish Sean for saying just as much. Ignoring what the men were discussing, Orissa continued to feed the children their breakfast. Go ahead and eat your fill. I'll be sending you to school in a short while. All right. Chapter 327. Just when they were briefly delighted, the children realized something suddenly. Mommy, it's the weekend today. We don't have to go to school. Caught by surprise, Orissa beamed. Huh, you're right. I almost forgot. She assumed that it was Monday after seeing Benjamin in his suit. When she snuck a glance at him, he returned her gaze and raised his brow curiously. Pursing her lips, she averted her gaze and continued with breakfast. Is he going out? After breakfast, Benjamin instructed her to get herself prepared. Where are we going? To the office. When he swept his gaze at her, she was stumped. But, today's the weekend. We still have lots of unfinished work to clear, Benjamin reminded her. Lips twitching, Orissa gave the workaholic Benjamin a look of resignation. Left without a choice, she got herself changed and prepared for work. With that, the children were left in Kingsley and Sean's care. Consequently, they were upset over the fact that their mother had to work overtime together with Benjamin. When Darius came over to see the children, they complained to him that Benjamin didn't allow Orissa to spend time with them. Fuming, Darius called Benjamin and gave him an earful. Before Benjamin could even respond, he ended the call and brought his grandchildren out to play. When they left home, Orissa remembered to bring Benjamin's medication along. Along the journey there, she poured some water from a flask and handed him his pill. It's time for your medication, Mr. Graham. Raising his eyes from his tablet, Benjamin looked at her. Orissa returned his gaze with a smile. Deep down, however, she was understandably irritated that he had brought her to work on a weekend. Orissa, are you trying to go against me? Benjamin suddenly asked. Caught off guard, Orissa shook her head and asked curiously, what are you talking about? We're not at the office, so why are you addressing me as Mr. Graham? Benjamin was unsettled by the fact that she had addressed him that way. Orissa pursed her lips in annoyance. But how else am I supposed to address him? Should I call him handsome? Or Mr. Picky? After sniggering to herself, she inquired mischievously, what should I call you then? When Benjamin gave her a meaningful look, she averted her eyes and blushed as her heart began to race. You can call me Benjamin or just Ben. As his magnetic voice rang out, it rumbled through her ears, giving her a tingling sensation. Gasp! Orissa screamed in her heart by reflex. That's so cringy. She snuck a glance at Benjamin's calm expression. If it wasn't for her inherently sharp hearing, she would have thought that she was hearing things. I think Mr. Graham sounds better. If I address you by your first name, it might cause others to misunderstand our relationship. With a glint in his eye, Benjamin pressed on with his questions. What relationship? When Orissa snuck a glance at him, she was surprised to find him staring earnestly at her. In response, she avoided the topic self-consciously. You should take your medication quickly. She shoved the pill and water into his hands. After giving her a look, Benjamin swallowed the pill and downed it with the water from the flask. Coincidentally, Orissa caught a glimpse of his bobbing Adam's apple and found the sight to be inexplicably arousing. After drinking a few mouthfuls, Benjamin put down the flask. When he noticed that she was staring at him with glistening eyes, his gaze darkened. Leaning over to her, he peered deep into her eyes. With a husky and alluring voice, he asked, Orissa, why are you looking at me that way? Do you want me to kiss you? When she regained her senses and saw the teasing look in his eyes, her cheeks instantly blushed, and she gave him a bashful stare. No one wants to be kissed by you, you lunatic. Turning away from him, she looked out the window instead. Nonetheless, Benjamin cracked a devious smile when he noticed that even her earlobes had reddened. Moving closer to her, he deliberately spoke into her ear from behind. Given how you were looking at me just now, I assumed that you were looking for a kiss. Chapter 328. When Benjamin's warm breath blew past her ear, Orissa blushed even harder. Then, she turned around and glared annoyingly at him before returning her attention to the passing scenery outside. "Why are your ears so red?" When Benjamin touched her ear, she trembled at the sensation. After pushing his hands away, she covered her ears. "I'm just feeling hot." Benjamin raised his brow and flashed a devilish smile. "Why are you hot?" As his flirtatious aura enveloped her, Orissa's heart pounded furiously. What is he trying to do? Why is he teasing me incessantly? Does he think that there's nothing I can do to him? With a sly look in her eyes, Orissa turned around and gazed earnestly at him. Subsequently, he was stunned when he saw how exquisite and doll-like her features were up close. Even though she was already a mother, she looked no different from a student. He found her big glistening eyes to be extremely seductive when he noticed the mischievous glint in them. "Benjamin, you have feelings for me, don't you?" Orissa declared with shameless conviction. Benjamin lifted his brows and gazed deeply at her. Nevertheless, he didn't respond. "HMPH. You must have fallen for me. Or else, you wouldn't have kept teasing me all the time." Despite her smug reaction, Benjamin wasn't angry at all. After all, it was true that he had taken a liking to her. "Does flirting with you mean that I have fallen for you?" Benjamin snorted in denial. Orissa rolled her eyes. "If you don't like me, why did you blacklist that star?" "Your intentions didn't escape me. You blacklisted him simply because I told you that I'm a fan of his. Besides, you keep stealing kisses from me and tease me all the time. I'm not a fool, you know. I mean, why would you keep trying to get close to me if you have no feelings for me?" Benjamin was rendered speechless. "Previously, you even declared that you didn't like me and hated me. So, can I take it that you're eating your words now?" Leaning closer with a gleeful look, she stared at his perfect features. The longer she stared at him, the less control she had over her emotions. "I can't believe how outrageously handsome he is." Benjamin pinched her cheeks. "I wasn't aware that I had feelings for you. Aren't you worried that you're just deluding yourself by being so certain about it?" He taunted her. Orissa gloated, "I'm pretty confident in my charm. No man will truly dislike me." Benjamin was stumped. When the image of a man appeared in his mind, he asked, "What about the man we met at the hospital? Doesn't he hate you?" Realizing that he was talking about Hector, Orissa bit her lip with a scowl. "I don't need the approval of a man like him. Jerks like him should stay as far away from me as possible." Benjamin's gaze deepened. Men like him are indeed useless. It's a good thing that he doesn't like you." Feeling awkward at his comment, Orissa gave him a wary look. "What are you trying to say? Are you mocking me? I'm giving you a compliment." Benjamin broke into a sly grin. Snorting at him, Orissa couldn't be bothered to argue with him. "Do you still want to apply the medication?" she asked. "We'll do it at the office." Orissa gave him the side eye. "Isn't it the same if we do it in the car?" After glancing at her, Benjamin gestured at the driver in front. With her lips twitching, Orissa retorted, "You're not a girl. What are you afraid of?" Benjamin was at a loss for words. "I just don't like it, all right," he replied in an annoyed tone. Orissa choked on her words. "Fine, he's the boss. It's either his way or the highway." When they arrived at the company, Orissa was forced to follow him to his office on the top floor. There, she applied his medication for him. When she was done and was about to return to her office, Benjamin called out to her, "Where are you going?" "To my office, of course." Her work documents were all in there. "But what am I going to do when I need you?" Chapter 329. "You'll be working here today and you're not allowed to go anywhere else," Benjamin ordered. Folding her arms in frustration, Orissa glared at him for making things difficult on purpose. "Mr. Graham, how am I going to work without going out? My things are in my office downstairs. I'll get someone to bring them up." Just as he spoke, Benjamin made a call. Soon, someone brought all of Orissa's documents up from her office. In fact, they even brought her computer along. Stumped, Orissa glanced at her boss and sighed. "Mr. Graham, where shall I sit then?" The moment Benjamin swept his gaze at her, someone moved a desk into his office and placed it near the door. Orissa's lips twitched when she saw it. By sitting there, everyone would assume that she was Benjamin's secretary. Nonetheless, she didn't complain. Once the men had set everything up, she tidied her desk and got to work. When Benjamin snuck a glance and saw how focused she was at work, he grinned to himself. Sensing his burning gaze, Orissa turned around but was greeted by the sight of him engrossed in work. Just when she looked away, his instructive voice rang out. "Go and make me some coffee." When she saw him at work and that there were only two of them in the office, she frowned. Benjamin looked up at her. "Didn't you hear me?" Filled with exasperation, Orissa gritted her teeth and reminded him, "Mr. Graham, I'm not your secretary." After giving her a thoughtful look, Benjamin answered, "You'll be my secretary for today." Just as she was seething, Ethan and Jack came over. She called out at once, "Mr. Frank, Mr. Graham wants some coffee." "Okay, I'll go prepare it at once." When Ethan went off to do as he was told, Benjamin knitted his brows. Sensing the tension in the air, Jack quickly turned and hurried after Ethan. "Orissa, why are you pushing your responsibilities to someone else after I instructed you to do something?" "Did I?" Not only did she give him an innocent look, she even broke out into a professional smile. Despite his darkening gaze, the anger he felt quickly dissipated at the sight of her. He snorted, "Hurry up and finish your work. Otherwise, you'll have to stay back here alone to finish it tonight." Orissa shot him a glare behind his back. What a slave driver. After pouring herself a glass of water, she got down to business. Meanwhile, Ethan returned with the coffee. After serving Orissa one, he served Benjamin the other. Looking up, Benjamin instructed, "We'll have a meeting at 10. Briefly shocked, Ethan bowed slightly and acknowledged, "Understood." With that, he hurried out to cascade the information. Considering that it was the weekend, many of the company's staff were out. Hence, he wasn't sure if everyone would be able to make it back to the office in time. Sympathetic to their predicament, he called all of them personally after informing them in the group chat. Naturally, every single manager began to lament upon learning of the meeting. Given that Orissa was engrossed in her work, she didn't realize that Ethan had entered. When she reached out to grab her drink, she didn't notice that it was hot coffee. Ouch! After being scalded from the sip, she was jolted back to her senses. She spat the coffee out at once and put down the cup. With a drastic change in expression, Benjamin hurried over. "Let me see." When he lifted her head, Orissa was forced to look up at him. "Open your mouth to let me check." Benjamin frowned, for he knew how hot the coffee was just now. Orissa replied bashfully, "I'm fine." When she turned away to pant, she could feel a burning sensation on her tongue. Ignoring her reply, Benjamin turned her face back and pinched her mouth open. Orissa looked at him in disbelief. At the sight of her scalded tongue, Benjamin furrowed his brows. Subsequently, Orissa avoided his hand and turned her back to him. Sticking her tongue out, she began to fan it. In the meantime, Benjamin went to get a glass of ice water. "Here, hold it in your mouth, quick." After shooting him a glance, she took the glass and drank. "I told you to hold it in your mouth, not drink it." Benjamin knitted his brows. Chapter 330. "I know, I'm just thirsty. Can't I drink some first?" Orissa shot Benjamin an exasperated glare before holding the ice water in her mouth. By doing so, her pain was relieved significantly. Knitting his brows, Benjamin admonished her, "Why didn't you look before you drink? Do you want to have your tongue removed from burning it?" Even though she was frustrated, Orissa couldn't rebut him with her mouth still full. Despite her defiance, Benjamin added, "Get a few more refills and hold the water in your mouth for 30 minutes. After that, he gave Sean a call, instructing him to come to the office at once. "Bring some medication for a scalded tongue with you." Looking at Benjamin's tall silhouette from the corner of her eyes, Orissa felt a warm feeling surging within her. The moment he turned around, she looked away swiftly. Benjamin stared intently at her. "Does it still hurt?" After giving him the side eye, Orissa swished the water in her mouth without responding. When Benjamin saw how she was puffing her cheeks, he was inexplicably tickled by it. He cleared his throat and reminded gently, "Next time, be more careful when you drink." Anyway, just wait for a little while, Sean will be here soon. Under Benjamin's concerned gaze, Orissa pursed her lips before grunting in acknowledgement. After giving her a pat on the head, Benjamin returned to his work. In response to his touch, Orissa's heart skipped a beat. After spitting out the water that had warmed in her mouth, she drank another mouthful and held it there. Just then, her phone started to ring. It was the children calling. Caught by surprise, she wondered if they knew that she was hurt. She decided to end the call and send them a message instead. I'm not free now. I'll call you back in a while. Zachary, Mommy, Grandpa is taking us out to play. Orissa felt envious, as she too wanted to join them. However, when she saw the files piled on her table, she put her phone down in resignation before diving back into work. 20 minutes later, Sean arrived, panting heavily. Who scalded their tongue? Sean was with Darius and the children while they were heading for a day out. Halfway along the journey, he hurried over after being summoned by Benjamin. When Benjamin saw how breathless Sean was, he frowned at him before lifting Orissa's chin. She scalded herself. I need you to check on her right away. When Sean realized that Orissa was working in Benjamin's office, his eyes sparkled in surprise. Oh my, since Benjamin has allowed her to work inside here, their relationship must be progressing rapidly. After putting his medical bag on Orissa's table, he asked with a smile, how did you end up burning yourself? Orissa spat the ice water out of her mouth. I burned myself while drinking coffee. Sean's lips twitched. Isn't this a common occurrence? Why did Benjamin call me over as if it was a serious emergency? Orissa rolled her tongue in her mouth, noticing that it was no longer as painful as before. Faced with Sean's dumbfounded expression, she was slightly embarrassed. Check her quickly. What are you spacing out for? Benjamin stormed over and gave Sean an impatient look. Having adjusted his glasses, Sean instructed Orissa, stick out your tongue for me to see. After looking at them, Orissa felt too shy to comply. Well, what are you hesitating for? Benjamin lifted his brow in a domineering fashion. Orissa rolled her eyes at him. I don't think it's that serious. Are you the doctor or is he? Benjamin snapped. After giving him a scowl, Orissa opened her mouth, stuck her tongue out, and retracted it at once. There, is it all right? She asked Sean. Sean was tickled by it. It's fine. Doesn't look serious to me. Benjamin narrowed his gaze. She almost drank the entire cup just now. Look, it's still red. How can you say that it isn't serious? Sean was amused by how anxious Benjamin was. She has already said that it isn't serious, so why must you insist on it being so? Are you the doctor now or am I?